March 17, 1952. City Hall, Lower Manhattan. A white business owner named Robert Caldwell sat across from Bumpy Johnson with a single piece of paper between them. One signature. That's all Bumpy needed. Caldwell smiled, picked up his pen, and said two words that would cost him everything: never happening. 18 hours later, 300 business owners walked into City Hall carrying forms with one name crossed out. Robert Caldwell's. The room went silent. Every single vendor contract, every supplier agreement, every delivery schedule, all pulled back. Caldwell's construction empire, built over 20 years, was about to vanish in less than a day. But here's what nobody understood until it was too late. This wasn't about one signature. This was about the one mistake you never make in Harlem. You never disrespect the man who 40,000 people would die for. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just some gangster. He was the invisible hand that kept Harlem breathing. And Robert Caldwell just slapped that hand in front of witnesses. Let me take you back 3 weeks. Caldwell Construction had every major contract in Harlem. Schools, apartment buildings, community centers. White-owned, but Harlem-funded. The man made $2 million a year off black neighborhoods while hiring exactly 7 black workers. 7 out of 340 employees. Bumpy noticed. He always noticed. February 22, 1952. Small's Paradise, Harlem. Bumpy sat in his usual booth, corner table, back to the wall. A young man named Marcus walked in, third-generation Harlem, skilled carpenter, couldn't find work anywhere. He'd applied to Caldwell Construction 6 times. 6 rejection letters. All saying the same thing: no positions available. But Marcus knew different. He'd watched Caldwell's crews working. Seen them hiring. Watched white men with half his experience get jobs on the spot. No applications. No interviews. Just, you start Monday. Marcus had learned carpentry from his grandfather. The man who'd helped build the Apollo Theater. The man who'd crafted the bar at Cotton Club. Real craftsmanship. Old school. The kind where measurements were perfect because pride wouldn't let them be anything else. His grandfather had told him stories. About working on white projects for half the pay. About building mansions downtown while living in tenement buildings uptown. About creating beauty for people who wouldn't shake his hand. But you keep building, his grandfather said, because we're not building for them. We're building for us. For what comes after. Marcus kept those words. Kept applying. Kept getting rejected. Kept watching less qualified men get opportunities he earned. Until he couldn't take it anymore. Until he walked into Small's Paradise and asked to speak with Bumpy Johnson. Marcus wasn't asking for charity. He had certificates. References from 5 different contractors. 10 years of experience. Letters from architects praising his work. He brought all of it. Spread it on Bumpy's table like evidence in a trial. Bumpy looked at each paper. Took his time. Read every reference letter. Studied every certificate. Then he looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. Saw the frustration. The anger. The desperation of a man who just wanted to work. Who just wanted to use his hands to build something. Who just wanted what he'd earned. Marcus wasn't asking for charity. He just wanted a chance. But Caldwell had a system, and that system didn't include names like Marcus. Bumpy listened. Didn't say much. Just nodded. When Marcus finished, Bumpy slid an envelope across the table. Inside was enough money to feed Marcus's family for 2 months. But Bumpy said something else. Something that would change everything. Keep that money. You'll have a job in 3 weeks. Marcus didn't understand. Nobody did. Because Bumpy Johnson didn't make empty promises. Marcus tried to refuse the money. Said he wanted work, not handouts. But Bumpy pushed the envelope back. It's not charity. It's an investment. In 3 weeks, you're gonna have a job. But until then, your kids need to eat. Your wife needs groceries. Your rent needs paying. Take the money. Pay me back with the work you're gonna do. The good work. The kind your grandfather taught you. Marcus took the envelope. Walked out of Small's Paradise still not understanding. Still not believing. Because how could one conversation change what 6 rejections couldn't? He was about to find out. If you want the full truth about what happened next, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to understand how real power works. Here's what most people didn't know about Harlem in 1952. Every business owner, every shop, every restaurant, they all needed licenses, permits, vendor contracts, supplier agreements, and all those papers went through channels that Bumpy Johnson controlled without ever appearing on a single document. See, Bumpy had spent 25 years building something invisible, something more powerful than any gang. He'd built a network, not through violence, through respect, through showing up when people needed him, through making sure old ladies could walk home safely, through keeping drug dealers away from schools, through putting food on tables when men couldn't find work. Every small business owner in Harlem remembered when Bumpy loaned them money to stay afloat during the Depression. Every union leader remembered when Bumpy helped them organize without getting beaten by police. Every community leader remembered when Bumpy funded their programs without asking for recognition. This wasn't about fear. This was about debt. The good kind. The kind where people owe you because you actually helped them, not because you threatened them. Caldwell Construction needed city permits. But permits needed community approval. And community approval needed signatures from local business associations. Harlem Business Council, Lenox Avenue Merchants, 125th Street Vendors Union, Apollo Theater Board, Abyssinian Baptist Church Community Fund. Guess who sat on every board without holding a single official title? People who answered to Bumpy Johnson. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. Because Bumpy had earned that loyalty one handshake, one favor, one act of genuine care at a time. Caldwell didn't know this. He thought his white skin and his city hall connections made him untouchable. He thought Harlem was just a place to extract money. He never understood it was an ecosystem. And Bumpy was the apex predator. March 15, 1952. 2 days before the meeting, Bumpy made phone calls. Quiet calls. One to Samuel at the Plumbers Union. One to Martha at the Electrical Contractors Board. One to Julius at the Steel Suppliers Guild. Same message to everyone. Robert Caldwell needs to understand something. Nobody asked questions. They just waited. March 17th. The meeting. Caldwell walked into City Hall conference room like he owned it. Expensive suit. Leather briefcase. Confidence of a man who'd never been told no by people he considered beneath him. Bumpy was already there. Simple black suit. Hat on the table. No briefcase. No papers. Just sitting there, completely still. Caldwell sat down. Didn't shake hands. Didn't acknowledge Bumpy's presence with respect. Just slid the paper across. This permit needs your signature as community representative. Bumpy looked at the document. New construction project. Luxury apartments on 135th Street. 12 stories. 200 units. Exclusively for white residents. In the heart of Harlem. How many local workers on this project? Bumpy asked. That's not your concern. How many black workers getting hired? Caldwell leaned back. Smiled that smile. The smile that said he'd dealt with these people before. Listen, Johnson. I've got Mayor Impoliteri's approval. I've got the zoning board. I've got investors putting in $4 million. I don't need your permission. I need your signature as a formality. Sign it or don't. This project's happening either way. Comment respect if you believe Caldwell just made the biggest mistake of his life. Bumpy didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten. Just picked up the paper, folded it once, and slid it back. Then you don't need my signature. Caldwell's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Caldwell stood up. You people don't understand how the real world works. This isn't your corner. This is business. Real business. And you just made an enemy of the wrong man. Bumpy finally looked up. Made eye contact. Held it. I've been making enemies of the wrong men my whole life. They're all gone now. I'm still here. Caldwell walked out. Still confident. Still sure his City Hall connections would crush whatever resistance some Harlem gangster could organize. He went back to his office, called his foreman, told him to start ordering materials anyway. That was 4:37 p.m. By 8 p.m., 3 phone calls came in. First, Tommy from the plumbers union. 23 years they'd worked together. Bob, we need to review our contracts with your company. Nothing personal. Second call, 15 minutes later. Sarah from electrical contractors. Her father had worked with Caldwell since 1938. We're having issues with scheduling. Gonna need to postpone the 135th Street project indefinitely. Third call, 8:30. Miguel from steel suppliers. Our accountants found some discrepancies. Need to reevaluate all pending orders. Caldwell laughed. Didn't take it seriously. Small-time unions trying to flex. He'd dealt with union pressure before. Called his lawyer, told him to draft intimidation letters. Thought this would blow over by morning. He was wrong. This was power. Real power. The kind you can't buy with City Hall connections. And if I do all this? By 10 p.m., 12 more calls. Concrete suppliers couldn't guarantee delivery schedules anymore. Glass manufacturers discovered quality control issues that needed investigation. HVAC contractors had staffing shortages that would delay projects 6 months. Lumber yards were reprioritizing existing clients, and Caldwell wasn't on that list. Every single excuse sounded reasonable. Every single call was polite. Professional. No threats. No anger. Just business decisions. That's what made it terrifying. Caldwell stopped laughing. Started sweating. Called in his project manager. Started going through every active contract. 47 projects. 62 suppliers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in pending orders. By 11 p.m., his project manager quit. Just walked out. Said something about not wanting to be associated with this mess. 10-year employee. Gone in 10 minutes. By midnight, his phone was ringing every 15 minutes. Vendors he'd worked with for 15 years suddenly had concerns about payment schedules and questions about project viability. Old partners who'd made millions with him were suddenly unreachable. Secretaries saying they're in meetings, or out of town, or I'll have him call you back. Nobody called back. Caldwell finally understood. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. This was precise. This was surgical. But he still didn't understand the scale. Didn't understand that while he was making 3 phone calls to city councilmen who couldn't help him, Bumpy Johnson hadn't made a single call since 8 p.m. Because by 8 p.m., the message had already spread. Like electricity through water. Touch one wire, the whole pool lights up. March 18th, 6 a.m. Caldwell arrived at his office. His secretary handed him a stack of messages. 47 callbacks needed. All marked urgent. By 8 a.m., the first cancellation letter arrived. Murphy's Plumbing. 20-year relationship. Gone. By 9 a.m., 6 more letters. All apologizing. All referencing unforeseen circumstances. All pulling out of contracts. By 10 a.m., Caldwell was on the phone with his lawyer, his accountant, and 2 city councilmen. Nobody had answers. Nobody understood what was happening. By 11 a.m., Caldwell finally understood. This wasn't about contracts. This was about Bumpy Johnson. Type yes if you want to see what happened when Caldwell realized he'd declared war on the wrong man. Caldwell drove to Harlem. Found Bumpy at the same booth in Small's Paradise. Walked right up, no appointment, no respect, just desperation. What did you do? Bumpy was eating lunch. Didn't look up. I didn't do anything. I just didn't sign your paper. Bullshit. Every supplier I have is pulling contracts. Every union is walking away. This is you. Is it? I'll go to the police. The FBI. I'll tell them you're running extortion. Now Bumpy looked up. Not angry. Almost amused. Extortion? I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. I'm just a community representative. Remember? You said I didn't matter. So how could I do all this? Caldwell slammed his hand on the table. People in the restaurant turned. Bumpy's associates started moving closer. Bumpy waved them off. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Harlem isn't a place you extract from. It's a community. It breathes. It works together. And when you disrespect that community, The community responds. Fine. I'll hire more black workers. 20, 30, whatever you want. Not good enough. Then what? What do you want from me? Bumpy took a bite of his food, chewed slowly, made Caldwell wait. I want you to understand that you can't build anything in Harlem without Harlem's permission. Real permission. Not just signatures on paper. You can't come into someone's home, take their money, refuse to employ their children, and expect them to welcome you. I have City Hall approval. City Hall doesn't live here. City Hall doesn't know these streets. City Hall doesn't understand that every brick you lay, every wire you pull, every pipe you install, it all goes through people. People who live here. People who have families here. People who remember when men like you promised opportunity and delivered nothing. Caldwell's jaw clenched. So what do? You go to City Hall. You withdraw your application for that luxury apartment project. You submit a new proposal. Affordable housing. 50% of units for Harlem residents. 75% of construction jobs for local workers. Fair wages. Union rates. And you sign a community benefit agreement that guarantees all of this. Share this video so people understand what real power looks like. That'll cost me millions. Then you shouldn't have disrespected me. Caldwell stood there, every instinct telling him to fight, to call in favors, to use his connections. But he'd spent the last 18 hours watching his empire crumble. He'd watched 20-year relationships vanish with phone calls. He'd seen 300 business owners pull their support without Bumpy Johnson making a single public statement. Your suppliers will take your calls again. Your contracts will be honored. Your projects will move forward. But you'll never disrespect this community again. Caldwell walked out, drove back to Lower Manhattan, called his lawyer, started drafting new proposals. By March 20th, 42 contracts were reinstated. Suppliers returned calls. Unions agreed to new terms. By March 25th, Caldwell submitted a revised proposal to City Hall. Affordable housing, local jobs, community benefits. By April 3rd, Marcus, the carpenter who couldn't get hired, started his first day at Caldwell Construction. Foreman position, union wages. By April 15th, 73 black workers from Harlem were employed on Caldwell projects. More than 10 times what he'd hired in 20 years. But it wasn't just about numbers. It was about transformation. James, a mason who'd been blacklisted from every white-owned construction company, was now training apprentices. Dorothy, one of the first black women in construction management, was overseeing a 4-story apartment complex. Raymond, a 58-year-old electrician who thought his career was over, was installing wiring systems that would power homes for the next 50 years. Every Monday morning, Caldwell held meetings now. Not just with his white foreman. With everyone. Black workers. White workers. Union reps. Community leaders. Discussing schedules. Listening to concerns. Actually listening. His profits dropped 14% that first year. His City Hall friends stopped returning calls. His golf club memberships got re-evaluated. But his projects got finished. On time. Under budget. With better quality than he'd ever delivered before. Because when people have stake in their community, they build better. They care more. They show up differently. By 1953, Caldwell Construction had built 6 affordable housing projects in Harlem. 1,200 units. 70% occupied by black families. Fair rent. Good maintenance. No discrimination. The newspapers called it progressive urban development. The mayor used it in speeches about New York's commitment to equality. White liberals praised Caldwell as a champion of civil rights. Bumpy Johnson never got mentioned. Never got thanked publicly. Never appeared at any ribbon-cutting ceremony. But every single worker on those projects knew. Every family moving into those apartments knew. Every kid playing in those courtyards knew. The man who changed Robert Caldwell's mind wasn't wearing a suit at City Hall. He was sitting in a booth at Small's Paradise, making sure Harlem took care of its own. And Bumpy Johnson? He never signed the original paper. Never had to. Because the message was already clear. Here's what nobody teaches you about power. Real power isn't about threats. It's not about violence. It's not about making noise. Real power is about understanding systems, understanding relationships, understanding that every empire, no matter how strong it looks, is built on connections. And when you control those connections, you control everything. Caldwell thought he had power because he had City Hall, because he had money, because he had contracts. But all of that meant nothing in Harlem without the one thing Bumpy Johnson had earned over 30 years: respect. Not fear. Respect. When Bumpy made those phone calls, he didn't threaten anyone. He didn't demand anything. He just reminded people what they already knew. That community matters. That respect matters. That you can't build anything lasting on disrespect. 300 business owners pulled their support not because Bumpy forced them. They pulled it because they believed in what Harlem represented. They pulled it because they'd watched men like Caldwell take from their community for decades without giving back. They pulled it because when Bumpy Johnson said someone needed to understand something, that understanding was overdue. If this shocked you, comment power below. The newspapers never reported this story. No arrests were made. No crimes were committed. Just business decisions. Just contracts being reconsidered. Just people choosing who they wanted to work with. But in Harlem, everyone knew. They knew that on March 17, 1952, a white business owner tried to disrespect Bumpy Johnson. Tried to force his way through a community without showing respect. And 18 hours later, he learned the most expensive lesson of his life. By June 1952, Caldwell Construction had hired 147 black workers. His projects in Harlem continued. His business survived. But he never again walked into a meeting with Bumpy Johnson without shaking his hand first. Never again assumed his City Hall connections mattered more than community relationships. Never again made the mistake of thinking signatures on paper meant more than respect between people. And Marcus? The carpenter who couldn't get hired? By 1955, he was running his own crew. Training young men from Harlem. Teaching them the same skills he'd learned. Building a legacy that Caldwell's initial rejection tried to deny him. Because that's what Bumpy Johnson understood that men like Caldwell never did. Power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can build. And you can't build anything lasting on disrespect. The white business owner learned that lesson in 18 hours. But the lesson lasted the rest of his life. 300 forms pulled back. 300 relationships reconsidered. 300 people saying the same thing without speaking: respect our community or lose access to it. One signature refused. One decision made. One moment that proved what 40,000 people in Harlem already knew: you don't challenge Bumpy Johnson unless you're prepared to lose everything that matters. Because you can't break one man when an entire community stands behind him. If you want to see more stories about how real power works, hit that like button right now. Comment Bumpy if you believe communities should have this kind of power over their own neighborhoods. And subscribe because next week I'm revealing how Bumpy Johnson stopped the Italian Mafia from taking over Harlem's numbers racket using nothing but 3 briefcases and 24 hours. And not a single bullet was fired. You won't believe how he did it. The man who 40,000 would die for didn't need violence. He just needed respect. And Robert Caldwell learned that the hard way.